What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Guys, wanted to talk about this for a little bit because the Indianapolis Colts find themselves in a little bit of a predicament here going into the remainder of this season. It might end up being a pretty decent predicament. Some people, if you're a fantasy guy, you may not like this one, but we're going to go ahead and hop into it, guys. So, obviously, we have seen what Zach Moss has done through the first 4 games of the NFL season for the Indianapolis Colts. Clearly, he wasn't ready for week 1, but since then, since playing for Indianapolis this year, he has ran for basically over 400, almost 500 yards in just the first 4 and the last 4 games for the Indianapolis Colts. Twice he has accumulated over 100 yards rushing in all of those games. So you're sitting back and you're talking to yourself, okay, so I have over a guy here who is averaging over 100 yards per game so far through the last 4 games that the Colts have played. He has been the lifeline of this Colts offense, which has been a fantastic thing for Zach Moss. He has really helped this Indianapolis Colts team be able to win 3 of their last 4 games that they have played in. But now you have the situation where Jonathan Taylor came back this week, and now they just paid Jonathan Taylor. So you know that Jonathan Taylor is going to be here for the long haul. So there's no debating it. But now Jonathan Taylor is back, and Jonathan Taylor just had his game where, he came back for the first time since his injury, right? And you're now in a position where Zach Moss, on the debut of Jonathan Taylor's big game, had the best game of his entire career and his entire young career, I might add, against the Tennessee Titans, in which he took over the majority of the snaps. Now, obviously, as the season's going to go on, you're going to see Jonathan Taylor pick up more snaps because Jonathan Taylor is so explosive. He's such a dynamic player. Of course, Jonathan Taylor is going to come back and take more snaps because he's just that dynamic. And of course, they're kind of easing him back into it, right? They don't want to, first time that he's played in basically 10 months, don't want to rush him back and say, okay, time to carry 30 snaps. No, you don't do that to a guy that just came back from injury from the last 10 months, right? So the Colts are easing him back into this, but now you're sitting here saying to yourself, we have a situation where Zach Moss is looking like a stud running back. Like he has played like one of the best running backs in the entire NFL through the first 5 weeks of the season. And he didn't even play for the first week. He has more yards than everyone except I think maybe 8. And that's insane to think about because he missed 1 week. And this is a guy that no one had talked about up until before last season when he ran for 120 yards against the Texans, right? So you're in a situation now where you have to wonder, how is Indy going to balance the Jonathan Taylor versus Zach Moss debate going on? So, I mean, obviously, Zach Moss is playing so well, you cannot just set this dude to the side. Jonathan Taylor will still get snaps, and his snaps will probably increase as time goes along. But no doubt in my mind that Zach Moss will continue throughout the season to get at least 10 carries a game. Because Zach Moss is just that dude. He's the bruiser. He's the guy that gets the hard yards for you. You can't look at what he has done so far through the last 4 games of the season for Indianapolis and just say to sit this guy in the background. You can't do that. Now, I wish I could say going forward, if the Indianapolis Colts wanted to keep him around, like in long term, to have him paired with Jonathan Taylor moving forward, it could be like the new Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt sort of thing, right? Which would be insane. I mean, that would be a dynamic duo. And it will still be a dynamic duo this year. But the problem is he's playing so well right now that I don't think that he is going to stick around. I think there's going to be a team next year that will pay him enough money and enough of a guaranteed contract to convince him to stay with to go to them. Now, there is the possibility, and we'll talk about this as the season goes at the end, because remember, Zach Moss is on his last year of his deal. So that's what it is. But maybe it's a situation where Zach Moss wants to stick around and be around for what this team becomes. Who knows? But it is a great question of how does Indy split the carries between Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor? Because Jonathan Taylor at some point is going to get his snaps back, but how do they handle, him being out there? And Zach Moss, for as good as he's been, you can't just ignore it. So I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on how that one's going to go, because clearly neither one of these guys is elite at pass catching. I think we have found it, like, if only Evan Hall was here, that would be so much better. And obviously Shane Steichen has played in offensive systems where he has utilized multiple running backs in past systems before, with the Chargers and with the Eagles. We saw last year, even though Miles Sanders was the running back number one, Miles Sanders didn't run the ball 20 times a game. They don't do that. There was multiple times where they had running backs that would split carries and get things done. So I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on how the Colts should handle this, because, I mean, until Jonathan Taylor is fully healthy, Zach Moss is going to continue to be the carrier. He is going to be the guy that is going to continue to be that 20 plus carry guy until Jonathan Taylor gets a couple more weeks of football under him and he's ready for 100%. But I'm under the impression, guys, that if you're going to continue to do it like this, the Indianapolis Colts should, I think, try to have it to where Jonathan Taylor is running 15 times a game and Zach Moss is running 10. I'll be completely honest with you. I think Zach Moss, at minimum, when Jonathan Taylor comes back, should be carrying the ball at minimum 10 times. And the funny part is I don't even know, like, where exactly he should be primarily used, because both of these guys run the ball very similarly, and their styles are very, very similar. So I don't know how they want to move it with that. And they're either one of them could be a red zone guy. Either one of them could, because Jonathan Taylor can slip tackles, he breaks tackles, and so does Zach Moss. Zach Moss is doing it, I think, better than anyone except Christian McCaffrey. He's he is breaking tackles more than any other running back in the NFL besides Christian McCaffrey, who, by the way, right now is playing like the best running back in the NFL. So it's very difficult to sit here and wonder what the Colts are going to do with Zach Moss. It's even more challenging to wonder what they're going to do at the end of the season when all is said and done. But we're going to talk about that at the end of the season. But I think that this is such a great situation for Shane Steichen, because you feel confident in whichever running back you put out there. Yes, Jonathan Taylor might be the slightly more athletic running back than Zach Moss. But even what you just saw against Tennessee, Zach Moss busted a 56-yard run that made you think it was Jonathan Taylor. And that was the biggest run of his entire career. Zach Moss just showed everyone that he's got it. You don't have to worry about Jonathan Taylor. I got it. I can do it. The same exact stuff. So if I'm sitting here and I'm Shane Steichen, I'm saying this might end up being it might be a 50-50 split going into this year, guys. I might be completely honest with you. I know that Jonathan Taylor is going to be the future of this franchise, which is how it should be. And most likely, Jonathan Taylor might get a few more snaps than Zach Moss going down the road. But for this season specifically, since Jonathan Taylor's not getting paid until next year, you got to keep riding with the hot hand. Don't let Zach Moss slip. Let Zach Moss be a focal point in this offense going forward, because Zach Moss can do it. And the great part is, as the season goes along, Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss feeding off of each other will help to make it to where there is less people getting hurt. There's less wear and tear on both of them, because then Zach Moss won't have to carry the ball 25 times a game. And of course, Jonathan Taylor will be a lot healthier going into the offseason, and he's going to be a lot more fresh going into next year. So again, you have two running backs that are very similar in style, very similar in how they run it, very similar play styles. So I'm all for Indy going 50-50 ball on this for right now. Maybe even slightly Jonathan and a little less Zach. But other than that, Zach Moss needs to continue to be a very big focal point in this offense until Jonathan Taylor gets back 100%. He will be the focal point of the offense when it comes to running the football. And when Jonathan Taylor is 100% and ready to go, still needs to be a focal point in the offense. But let me know your guys' thoughts on this. I think it's awesome that the Colts have two running backs that are dynamic and are able to help us win football games. But that's going to do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.